from Whitefish, Montana. It's snowing again. I think that all of us, all over the country, are getting just brutal, brutal winter weather, whether it's snow or ice or rain. So I'm glad you're hunkered in and you're watching this and taking the time to watch it. So I want to thank you. So let's talk about inflammation today. And the question is, what inflames you? And, this was prompted, of course, by my hi, Melody. Hi, Kelly. I'm so glad you're on here. Thank you. Thank you for joining. In this last week, I met with my naturopath, and we had this long discussion on inflammation. Because inflammation, I'm struggling with it in my hands, in my gut, in my shoulders, in my joints. And as I've started to research it, I'm coming up with the ideas that there's a big connection between emotions and physical pain, or emotions and physical ailments. And so what I wanted to do today was explore what inflames you. What is this about? So let's just sort of dive in and see. So the scholar in me is always going to start let's just make sure we're all on the same page when we're talking about inflammation or inflamed. So to be inflamed is to provoke or intensify in someone some strong feelings, especially anger. So when you're inflamed, you have this sort of just under the surface anger always present, and it's like an agitation. It can also cause, inflamed is inflammation in the body. It is to arouse a high degree of passion, and it's to cause things to redden or heat up. And so what we're really talking about is that something happens, and I'm not sure, and that's what we really want to, that's what I really want to explore, is what happens when we start to experience symptoms of inflammation in our body. So I thought I would start first with inflammation on the biological side is a complex biological response to body tissues. And of course, Dr. Axe on Facebook and on the internet is saying that inflammation is the #1 cause of almost all diseases. Because what happens is something goes awry in the body, and then it holds on to that, and then it starts to redden and get inflamed, and it starts to get irritated, and then it starts to shut down. So it could be in the liver, it could be in the kidneys, it could be in your gut, it could be anywhere on those internal organs, and then as it gets into the bloodstream, it starts to spread into our joints and our hands and starts to affect things like autoimmune disease. All of these things that are just really scary. So, because I'm also going to always bring this metaphysical in, I wanted to talk about two people that have been really influential in helping me understand what's going on with the body. So Louise Hay, How to Heal Your Body. And this is a brand new one, Jacques Martel. It's out of Canada, and it's called The Complete Dictionary of Ailments and Diseases. And I'll also put a link to these on this website when I post it. So according to Louise Hay, who does this connection between the mental causes for physical illness and the metaphysical way to overcome them, is that inflammation is fear, seeing red, inflamed thinking. My thinking is peaceful and calm and centered is the way we want to start going after. If we notice that there's anger underneath the surface, is to start saying, my thinking is peaceful and calm and centered. And then when we have something like itis at the end of it, it means that there's inflammation on that particular organ or part of the body. So when we have an inflamed section of our body, there's anger and frustration about the conditions that you're looking at in your life. So it just really keeps coming back down to over and over and over again that there's some emotions that are associated with it. So, this Jacques Martel, he doesn't pull any punches. When I started working with inflammation, he put some things into questions and forms that were a little unsettling at first, and then they provided a really good guide. So I thought I would tell you what he had to say. So inflammation is a local defense reaction of the organism to a pathogen, like a disease-causing agent, and characterized by redness, heat, pain, and swelling. It's a bodily expression of an inner inflammation. So per Jacques and per Louise Hay, a lot of these symptoms, probably all of them, I'm going to take a real big stretch, start with some form of an emotional issue first. And then that emotion goes into the body and it sits there and it festers and it starts to impact other parts of our body. So it can show up in really deep, invisible ways, and we may not even be aware of it. So I wanted you to just listen to some of these questions and see if any of them sort of ring a bell. I am inflamed or enraged with someone or something. Most often it is the fire in the liver or the gallbladder that is in excess, which expresses itself in my body. I must ask myself, what aspect of my life is making me red and boiling with anger and will ultimately make me feel guilty? And so it's that anger, guilt, and the body goes swell, calm, and it's just crazy making for our biological systems that are matching what we think. Remember a couple weeks ago we did whatever we think about comes into form, right? Our thoughts turn into form. So when we're having these deep emotional thoughts of anger or frustration, they're going to show up in forms that are saying, hey, by the way, you got to take care of this. Explore an area of the body and get more information about what causes this inflammation. So like if you notice that you have continue to have liver issues or kidney issues, or that you get really bloated after eating and you've got sort of a leaky gut, or you've got some intestines that aren't working well, it means that we're just not processing our emotions very well. Jacques says, I feel stuck and limited. My life is rigid and too structured. So sometimes we get inflamed when we're in too tight of a box and we can't move from side to side. And then we start to get this sort of low-level anger, and then it turns into inflammation in the body. Maybe this is an indication that I'm living in a situation in my life that I don't want to let go. I'm resisting change. I'm struggling angrily. What was previously needed to support me, to help me advance, is no longer necessary or required. The contradiction I'm living inflames me, which means and it could come down to a job. It could come down to way that you present yourself in your relationship. It could come down to struggles you have with your children. It could come down to a lot of really basic issues. A feeling of loss that I didn't accept that makes me feel really irritated. It irritates me and I become exasperated. So if you know that there's irritation or stuckness or rigidness or sort of a feeling of being boxed in, maybe it's a really good invitation to explore inflammation and what role does it play in our body and what do we do about that. So Dr. Axe has a lot of, it's not just him. You can Google anti-inflammation foods, and there's ways to bring the foods down. There's ways to bring in like curcumin, which is a turmeric source, to take off the inflammation, and work with your naturopath or your homeopath, or go to your local health food store and start talking about inflammation. What I'm learning is that these are Band-Aids and they're going to make us feel better and smoother, but if we don't go after those internal feelings of maybe being stuck, maybe being in the wrong job, in the wrong place, feeling boxed in, having this low-level anger, and watch where it kind of shows up in your body. These are ways that we are always being communicated to and telling us, hey, pay attention to this section. Pay attention. This needs your love and attention. So what his affirmation is I choose or accept to be different and express my opinions, even if they're different than others. I assert who I am and I maintain my uniqueness. And I'm learning to trust myself and live more spontaneously. What I like about these is it comes from a position of compassion, which is, I have to start trusting myself. I have to start using my voice. I have to start putting myself out there and not holding it on to inside so that it destroys parts of my body, but gives me a voice out there. Now, one of the most interesting pieces that came up out of my discussion with my naturopath was this concept of the inflamed brain. So when we have an organ in our body that becomes inflamed, And it keeps putting inflammation out there in the body. And then you notice it sort of spreads and it gets into your hands and it starts to feel like rheumatoid arthritis or stiffness, or it comes into your shoulders or your hips or your knees. What's happened is it's become so large that it's now in your blood system. And when it goes through your blood system, of course, it gets to your brain. So what we're talking about is a real low level seething anger that's in our thought patterns. So when we have an inflamed brain, it's kind of scary. The inflammation grows and it spreads, and it comes out as the presence of anger. It comes out as the loss of compassion. It also increases the level of anxiety in the body. So we as a culture are starting to see a couple of things. We have so many people in pharmaceutical and medical industry, or medical appointments in medical care for inflammation. I got hearts going all across this. This is spot on. We are a country that's inflamed. We are ignoring our gut. We are ignoring our bodies, and we're sort of pushing down our emotions. And we are also a country of increased anxiety. So it's nutrition, it's anxiety, it's the way we think, it's the way we act, and it's the way we hold compassion in the world. So if we want to look at the political situation, or we want to look at our job, or we want to look at our relationship, or we want to look at our self-care, we start with finding out what is it that our body is trying to tell us. Then we get little resources like Jacques Martel or Louise Hay, and we find out, if it's kidneys, what are the kidneys all about? Why do I keep getting kidney stones? Why do I have pervasive kidney stones for the last 10 years? Find out what the kidneys are trying to tell you. Do that emotional work. Watch your outer world change, and then watch how you start to view what's possible in our global, international environment, and start to say, I'm going to step out of being that inflamed person who's really angry and pissed off at what's going on, and start becoming a vehicle for change. So if you are struggling with inflammation, coaching is one of those things where we always start with a situation, and then we explore, where does it go? Does it go into how our nutrition and how we support our body? Does it go into our relationships? Does it go into how we get therapeutic support? It's just about tools and resources. So this is what I do. You can check me out on DeniseDrydenCoaching.com and read some of the stuff I've posted there, look at some other videos, and check it out. And give me a call if you would like to chat. Meanwhile, have a wonderful Sunday. I'm taking off and going to Chico Hot Springs as soon as we're off the phone. So enjoy your week, enjoy your winter, stay warm, and thank you for watching. Bye-bye.